He pointed his finger at me across the oak courtroom table, voice trembling with rage. This woman is not my mother. I didn't flinch. After 30 years of silence, he still didn't know what I'd become and I was about to show him. The judge's gavel cracked through the air, a harsh echo in the tense courtroom. Opening statements, she said briskly. I rose. The fabric of my black skirt suit whispered against my legs, crisp and sharp, like the years I'd spent preparing for this moment. My son sat across from me at the plaintiff's table, his jaw tight, his hands curled into silent fists. He looked older than I remembered. Of course he did. 30 years will do that to a man. But his eyes were still the same. And they didn't recognize me. Your Honor, I began, my voice clear, firm, and low. This case is about responsibility. Not just legal responsibility, but moral reckoning. He shifted in his seat, visibly bristling. Good. Let him squirm. My client did not steal this intellectual property. She created it. With her own 2 hands. With her own sleepless nights. And the man suing her, a man who claims to be protecting the interests of a company, is, in fact, stealing her past. Her sacrifices. Her life. I paused, letting my gaze fall heavy on him. And in an ironic twist of fate, I know exactly what that feels like. Silence. The kind that stretches and tenses the muscles between your shoulder blades. He looked up then, eyes narrowing. Suspicion had bloomed. Memory stirred. But still, he didn't say my name. The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and varnish. It always did. But for me, that scent had become something else, an aroma I'd grown to associate with justice, with rising again. I sat down. My hands didn't tremble. I had spent 3 decades building myself back from ashes, clawing up through the bones of humiliation and heartbreak. There was nothing left in me that could be shaken by his hatred. Then he stood. My name is Daniel Cole, he began, CEO of Cole Tech Industries. My company developed the Echo Trace security algorithm. And 6 months ago, we discovered a nearly identical patent filed by a former employee, a woman named Harper Lee. He turned to the jury. That woman is being represented by a lawyer who, I must admit, has a particular flair for theatrics. But don't be fooled. His gaze, full of contempt, slid back toward me. This case isn't about moral reckoning. It's about theft. The jury watched him carefully. He was good, charismatic. Like his father. My lips tightened slightly, and I caught myself before any flicker of emotion betrayed me. That resemblance, so sharp in the cheekbones, in the arrogant tilt of his chin, had once filled me with joy. Now it stung like salt in a wound I thought long healed. He stepped down, and finally, as he passed me, he looked straight into my eyes. And I saw it. That flicker, that fracture in his certainty. Something, somewhere in the deep recesses of his adult mind, had whispered my name. Mom. But it didn't matter yet. Not until the truth was laid bare. 32 years ago, I stood on a different kind of stage-me front porch, a baby on my hip and a duffel bag at my feet. Daniel was just 19 then, fresh out of his first semester at university. He stood there, taller than me already, red-faced with fury. You don't get to come back here, he spat. I'm still your mother, I'd said quietly, trying to meet his eyes. No, you're not. You left. You chose school. Law school. His voice cracked. You chose that over me. I hadn't argued. He wouldn't have heard me. He'd already made up his mind. I watched as he pulled out his phone, dialed his father, and said the words that would cut deeper than any blade. She's not welcome here. Not now. Not ever. That night, I slept in the back of my used Chevy under a flickering gas station light. I remember counting the seconds between flickers to stay awake. I was 27, freshly divorced, broke, and rejected by the one person I'd held onto through it all. Daniel. The present-day courtroom blurred for a moment, the memory too sharp. I blinked it away. Harper leaned toward me. He's rattled. He's posturing, I replied. He always did that when he felt outmatched. She glanced at me, puzzled, but said nothing. The first witness was called Harper's former supervisor, a man named Vince Granger. A weary tech veteran with a crisp suit and a buried conscience. Mr. Granger, I said, standing before him. Can you explain to the court how Miss Lee developed the Echo Trace algorithm? He adjusted his glasses. She worked on it for 2 years. Mostly off the clock. No company directive. Just her idea, her time. And did anyone else assist her? He hesitated. No. but the company claimed her work because she used company hardware. I raised an eyebrow. Did the company encourage innovation on personal projects? He cleared his throat. Yes. Did they reward it? Sometimes. But not in this case. No. And when Miss Lee refused to assign her patent to the company, what happened? She was terminated, he said quietly. I turned to the jury. Thank you. No further questions. Daniel didn't even cross-examine. That told me everything. He wasn't ready. He didn't expect me to come with facts, witnesses, or years of strategic patience. Good. Because I hadn't just come to win this case, I'd come to reclaim my name. It was during a recess that the inevitable happened. He approached me. Not to speak. Not yet. But to stare. Like a man who'd caught a scent on the wind and couldn't shake the familiarity. You look familiar, he finally said. I smiled softly. Many do. He tilted his head. Where did you go to law school? Columbia. His eyebrows rose. Impressive. Painful, I replied. He faltered. Excuse me. I said it was painful, I repeated. I had to work nights, raise a child, take student loans no firm would forgive. He said nothing. The silence spoke volumes. I once knew a boy, I continued, letting each word drip with slow precision, who used to stay up late on the living room carpet, tinkering with radio parts. Said he wanted to build things that would change the world. His breath caught. I used to read to him at night. Books about inventors. About Edison, Tesla, Ada Lovelace. I told him he'd be one of them someday. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I left, I said softly. But not because I wanted to. Because I had to survive. And then I walked away, heels clicking like a metronome, counting down the moment he'd realize. He had sued his own mother. The jury saw it long before the verdict. His confidence slipped day by day. My arguments grew stronger, bolstered by facts, records, evidence of corporate coercion. I was meticulous, ruthless. Every blow I delivered wasn't just for Harper. It was for the night I cried into my steering wheel outside that gas station. For every birthday he ignored. For every letter I wrote and never sent. When I delivered the closing argument, I didn't hold back. This isn't just about code, I told them. It's about identity, ownership, and how the world treats those who are easy to overlook. I looked directly at him then. Sometimes, the people we discard return stronger, wiser, and sometimes they come back wearing a suit. Daniel didn't show up in the courtroom the next morning. His legal team was there, whispering amongst themselves, clearly anxious. The judge frowned at the empty plaintiff's chair. Mr. Cole's absence? She asked, glancing over her glasses at the junior associate standing in his place. He's ill, Your Honor, the young man stammered. He'll return tomorrow. I didn't buy it. He wasn't sick. He was stunned, shaken, retreating into himself the way I remembered he used to as a boy whenever he broke something and didn't know how to fix it. Harper leaned into me, whispering, "What's going on?" He looked pale when he left yesterday. I studied the empty seat where my son should have been. He's remembering. I hadn't told Harper. I hadn't told anyone, really. My past was a locked drawer, and the key had long since rusted in place. But now, the lock had started to break open not because I wanted it to, but because fate demanded it. On the witness stand that day, I called forward one final expert, a patent historian who explained the genealogy of the algorithm. His analysis was damning, showing the earliest trace of the echo trace code in Harper's notebooks, time-stamped months before Coltech's development logs even began. I watched the jury lean in. Their pens paused. Their eyes sharpened. By the time I rested my case, the story was no longer murky. Harper wasn't just a whistleblower. She was the architect of the future, and my son had tried to erase her. That evening, I returned to my hotel, exhausted but calm. I removed my heels slowly, savoring the relief, and sat by the window, watching dusk settle over the city. Lights blinked on in tiny golden squares. Somewhere across the skyline, my son was likely pacing in a penthouse apartment he paid for with stock options and his last name. He would have questions now, ones that no courtroom answer could satisfy. I expected him to reach out, but I didn't expect him to knock on my door at 11:17 p.m. I opened it slowly, chain lock still fastened. There he stood, hands in his coat pockets, hair disheveled, eyes rimmed red. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice hushed. I didn't say yes. I simply undid the chain and let the door swing open. He stepped inside like a man entering a church, quiet, reverent, unsure of his place. "You knew," he said, not facing me. "I knew what?" I asked, walking back to the chair. "Who I was. You knew from the start." "Yes." "Why didn't you say something?" "Because you wouldn't have heard it." He turned slowly, looking down at me. "Say it now." I took a breath, folded my hands in my lap, and said, "I'm your mother, Daniel." Silence again, the kind that thickens the air. He sat on the edge of the bed, not looking at me. "I thought you died." "You were told that. Dad said you overdosed. That they found you in a motel somewhere in Ohio." I closed my eyes, my jaw tightening. "Your father lied. I wrote you dozens of letters, all returned unopened. I called. Your grandmother said you didn't want to speak to me." "I didn't," he whispered. "I hated you." "I know. I thought you chose your career over me." "I chose survival," I said. "I chose the only thing that would give me the power to come back for you. But when I was finally stable, you were gone." He looked up at me finally, and I saw his face crumbling. Like he'd carried a story for decades, and just now learned it was fiction. "I built everything to prove I didn't need you," he said bitterly. "And yet, here we are," I replied. He gave a short, breathless laugh. "God, what the hell do we do now?" I didn't answer that. I wasn't ready. Neither was he. The next morning, Daniel returned to court. No tailored suit today. Just a navy sweater, jeans, and the vulnerability of a man no longer certain where he stood in the world. The judge glanced up at him. "Mr. Cole, will you be proceeding with closing statements?" He hesitated, looked at me, then nodded. But when he stepped forward, he didn't speak to the jury. He turned to face me. "I came into this courtroom thinking I was here to protect what I'd built," he said. "But I realize now that I've spent most of my life trying to destroy what I never understood." He looked to the judge, then back to the gallery, to the dozen strangers watching our broken story unfold. "This woman," his voice cracked, "she's not just a lawyer. She's the one who taught me how to build, to think, to imagine." Gasps rippled faintly across the benches. He nodded slowly. "She's my mother." That night, the press exploded. Headlines ran wild. CEO's surprise confession in courtroom drama. Mother and son face off in legal battle, truth revealed in stunning twist. Daniel Cole, the lawsuit, the lie, the legacy. But I didn't read them. I was sitting on a park bench, wind teasing the gray strands from my bun, sipping a paper cup of too hot coffee. A quiet little moment, stolen from chaos. I hadn't had many of those in my life. Daniel found me there. He sat beside me without asking, holding 2 croissants in a paper bag. We didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "I dropped the case." I nodded. "She's keeping her patent. Coltech is issuing a public apology. I'm stepping down. For a while." "That's wise." He chuckled. "You're still giving me advice." "Old habits." "I don't know what happens now," he murmured. "You don't have to," I said, placing a hand over his. "Just don't walk away again." He squeezed my fingers gently. "I won't." Daniel didn't say much after that morning in court. Neither did I. We weren't suddenly mother and son again. Not yet. But something unspoken had shifted between us. A bridge, long burned, had revealed its first plank. I stayed in the city a few more days, tying up post-trial motions, speaking to reporters on Harper's behalf. She had offers lined up, investors, licensing deals, a new job waiting in Seattle. She hugged me on the courthouse steps with tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she whispered. I thought of all the years I spent not being able to save anyone, least of all myself. "No," I told her. "You saved yourself. I just reminded them you existed." She left that night with a small suitcase and a big future. And I was left with the empty space of silence again, only this time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt open, unfinished. That evening, I got a call. "Daniel, I'd like to take you somewhere," he said. "You sure?" "I am." He drove us out of the city, past the old freeway exits I hadn't taken in years. My fingers tightened around the seatbelt when I saw the sign, Weston County. My old neighborhood. "Why here?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "You'll see." He turned off onto a gravel road, the tires crunching like old bones beneath us. We pulled up in front of a house I hadn't seen since I was 28 years old. The shutters were gone. The yard was overgrown. But it was still standing, the home where I had raised Daniel alone for the first decade of his life. The home I'd left when everything crumbled. Daniel cut the engine. We sat in silence. I bought it back 2 years ago, he said. I was going to tear it down, build something new, but something kept stopping me. I stared out at the rusted mailbox, the cracked sidewalk, the front porch light still hanging by a wire. He turned to me. Come on, I want to show you something. The key he pulled from his coat was old, worn, and familiar. When he opened the door, the smell hit me immediately: aged wood, dust, and a faint trace of rose water I hadn't used since 1994. He flicked on the lights, and I gasped. It wasn't empty. It wasn't ruined. The house had been restored. The peeling wallpaper was now the same soft cream color I'd once picked from a catalog. The wooden banister gleamed like it had been polished only hours ago. The photos on the mantel carefully placed showed us, me and Daniel, from when he was 4, 8, 10, even the one I thought he had burned. The two of us in front of the Science Museum, arms full of books and popcorn, our faces glowing with joy. I don't remember half these moments, he said, gently touching a frame. But you kept them, and one day, Dad told me where you stored the boxes. You found my things in the attic of his old lake house, buried under Christmas decorations. He turned to me, voice tight. Mom, I went through every photo, every note, every bill you paid alone, every certificate from law school with my name scrawled on the back in your handwriting. For Daniel. So one day he knows I did this for him. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the living room couch, upholstered in the same green velvet as before. You wanted me to know, he said, and I never let myself believe it. I thought you hated me, I whispered. I did, he admitted, because I didn't understand. But now I do. He walked to a small cabinet and opened it. Inside, a shoebox, the one I used to keep my most private letters in. He brought it to me, opened the lid. Inside were dozens of envelopes, me handwriting, faded but intact. You kept them. I read every one. He sat beside me. You didn't abandon me. You were just erased. My throat closed. The tears burned hot, fast. I had waited over 30 years to hear those words. We spent the next few hours walking through the house room by room. He told me how he remembered falling asleep under the kitchen table, waiting for me to come home from late shifts. I told him how I used to tuck in his teddy bear beside him after he was already asleep. We remembered different things, pieces of a puzzle we were only now putting together. In the attic, we found one last box I'd forgotten, full of his childhood drawings. Rockets, robots, buildings. I held up a crooked, crayon-smeared sketch titled, My Mom is a Superhero, and we both laughed through our tears. I think I was right, he said softly. You were. No, I corrected him. I was just a mother. The best I knew how to be. A few days later, I was packing up to return home when Daniel called again. I've been thinking, he said. Maybe we could do something together. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? Start a foundation. For women in tech. Or single mothers going back to school. Something real. Something big. I smiled. With both our names on it. He hesitated. With yours first. That made me laugh. Are you sure you're ready for headlines like Disgraced CEO Partners with Mother He Sued? Let them come, he said. We've survived worse. The night before I left, we stood on the porch of the old house, watching the sun sink behind the trees. I want to invite you to Thanksgiving this year, Daniel said. If you're ready. I'll come, I said. And Christmas. Don't push it. He grinned. Fair. Then he grew serious. I'm not perfect, he said. I may screw this up. I may still make you angry. But I won't disappear again. I looked up at him, my son, not the boy who pushed me away, but the man who had finally come back. I don't need perfect, I told him. I just need you to stay. He nodded. And for the first time in decades, I believed him. We didn't speak to the press that week. While news stations swarmed the courthouse and talk shows dissected every frame of courtroom footage, we stayed in the background, just two people trying to remember what it meant to be mother and son. After the case was officially closed, I packed my briefcase for the last time that Friday evening. I paused in the empty courtroom before walking out. I had stood in dozens of courtrooms in my career, but this one had changed something deep in me. Daniel met me at the bottom of the courthouse steps. No photographers. No crowd. Just him and a small paper cup of hot chocolate, how I used to make it for him when he was 8, extra marshmallows. You remembered, I said, taking the cup. He shrugged, almost bashful. I remember more than I thought. We walked in silence through the city. I didn't ask where we were going. It didn't matter. For once, I was just with my son. After 2 blocks, he stopped at a corner bakery, one we used to go to on Sundays. The bell above the door rang as we entered, and something in my chest pulled tight. It looked exactly the same. The checkered floor, the little chalkboard signs. Even the woman behind the counter hadn't changed much, though her hair had turned silver. She stared at me, then at Daniel. Her lips parted. "Is that?" Daniel smiled. "Yeah, it's her." She came out from behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, and hugged me without asking. "You look just like you did when you used to bring him in here for cinnamon rolls," she whispered. "We all wondered what happened to you." "I wondered the same," I said quietly. She made us coffee on the house, and we sat by the window, steam curling between us, decades trying to mend in the spaces where words still couldn't go. Later that night, Daniel drove us out of the city and into the quiet of the old suburbs. I recognized the road instantly. My breath caught. "You didn't," I whispered. He pulled into the driveway of the house I hadn't seen in 3 decades. The house where I had raised him until I couldn't anymore. It looked different, but it was still ours. "I bought it," he said, stepping out of the car. "A few years ago. Renovated it." I stepped out slowly, heart pounding. Why? I couldn't let it go. I told myself I hated this place. But I just missed you. The front door creaked open, and with it came a rush of memory. The smell of lavender from the drawer sachets, the faint scent of pine from the old floorboards. Daniel walked ahead, turning on the lights room by room. And then I saw them. Photos. Me and him. Us. Not just the ones we'd taken together, but some I hadn't seen in years, ones I didn't even know still existed. He had found them, preserved them, restored them. A photo of me in my graduation cap, Daniel on my hip. A Polaroid of him asleep on the living room rug, his small hand clinging to my law book. "I don't know why I kept these," he said. "I think some part of me always hoped you'd come back." My throat closed. "I never stopped being your mother," I whispered, even when I had nothing left. He turned to me, eyes shining. "I know." We sat on the floor of the old living room that night, a bottle of wine between us, sharing stories like 2 strangers learning one another from scratch. "I used to be angry all the time," he admitted. "I thought the anger made me strong." "It just keeps you moving," I said. "Until it doesn't." He glanced down. "I think I made everything worse. I tried to forget you, but all I did was build more walls." I reached out, placed a hand over his. "Then let's tear them down. One story at a time." He smiled. "You first." I told him everything. About the nights I studied in the back room while he slept, the eviction notices, the nights I cried into old towels to muffle the sound. About the man who promised to love me, but left when things got hard. About the job interviews that said, "You're too young, then you're too old, then you're too much of a mother." He listened, really listened. And when I finished, he told me his side. The loneliness, the confusion, the way his father told the story that I had walked away without a word. "I wanted to believe him," Daniel said. "Because if I didn't, then I'd have to admit how badly I needed you." "You don't have to carry that anymore," I told him. "It's over." He looked at me, then pulled something from his pocket. It was folded, worn, soft at the edges. A letter. My handwriting. "I kept this," he said. "The first one I ever read. The one where you said you still made his favorite spaghetti, just in case he came home." Tears slipped silently down my face. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. He just reached over and held me. For the first time in 30 years. The following week, Daniel made an announcement. He was stepping down as CEO of Coltech indefinitely. His official statement was brief but powerful, acknowledging wrongful termination, the attempted seizure of Harper's invention, and his intention to make amends. But privately, he told me something more. "I want to start something new," he said. "With you." I blinked. "A company? A foundation?" He handed me a folder. Inside, a mission statement, logo drafts, potential board members. The Lee Cole Foundation. Empowering women in tech. Supporting mothers in law and leadership. Building second chances. I looked up at him. "You want my name on this?" "No," he said, smiling. "I want it first." And so we began again. Not as the people we were, but as the people we had become. Daniel came to visit every weekend. We cooked together. He asked me about law. I asked him about business. We fought sometimes like any mother and son. But this time, we didn't walk away. He came with me to speak at law schools. I joined him at tech conferences. We shared our story publicly, raw, unvarnished, painful. And people listened because they saw something real. Redemption. Love returned. Forgiveness not earned, but offered. One afternoon, as we reviewed applications for the Foundation's first scholarship recipients, Daniel paused over one file. "This one's from your hometown," he said. I leaned in. A 22-year-old single mother. Law student. No support. Working nights. "She's you," Daniel said. I smiled. "Then she's already stronger than she knows." He picked up the pen and circled her name. "Approved," he said. "Let's do more than that," I said. "Let's mentor her." He looked at me, eyes wide. "Let's make sure," I said gently, "that she never ends up in a courtroom across from someone she loves."